Week 2 is here. We have officially overreacted and underreacted from week 1, but tonight we have a public service announcement. If you or your loved one's best ball bags have been harmed by garbage quarterback play, the law firm of Levis, Watson, Young, and Williams may be willing to serve you. You may be entitled to compensation. This is Stat Chasing.
Pat Fryer Helmo.
This is why I'm hot.
Anita Handjob.
Fix your sight.
Jamar Alpha Play Chase.
Are you kidding me? Kadarius Toney?
You can't handle the heat.
Pete, it looks like we're finally piss boys. You're right.
I botched the cold open, Drico. It was such a botch.
You had it going so good as well. You started it so good.
I know.
And then you went into they may be willing to service you.
I was trying to think. What is this law?
You had them. You had the right lines. You just you switched them up.
The play call was great. The execution was poor, though. So what can you do?
What can you do? Speaking of per execution, I don't have the charts pulled up.
That's okay. We can vamp while you pull up the charts. Definitely some cool stuff. I was going through them as I was putting them together today, and there were some things where I feel like we're starting to see maybe like a trend emerging as the first little green leaf poking through the soil. It's budding up. And there are also some things where it's probably too early to tell yet. And then most importantly, and I really want to make sure we provide this kind of context tonight, there were things where I think that the data might be lying to us if we're not looking at it in the context of what actually happened in the games. So definitely want to keep that in mind tonight.
That's why you watch all the games. Now, I honestly, I'm really paranoid about sound quality this evening because yesterday was so bad. So I'm gonna need some affirmation or not that I sound better this week. While we chat here.
You sound great to me, but yeah, we'll see if the chat can confirm or deny.
Well, ship chasing. Okay. I'm glad to hear it. So, as we introduced our new chart last week, we're combining kind of volume with efficiency here. On the horizontal axis, we've got expected points from passing, and then on the vertical axis, we've got adjusted yards per attempt, which is our kind of an efficiency metric, and then the size of the bubble is that corresponds to rushing yards per game, because obviously quarterback rushing very important. So what kind of interested you, Zach, this week?
Well, wanted to start with some of the outliers. The first one is Goff, who is just a huge outlier with his expected fantasy points from passing, just a ton of volume. Really, I think this is mostly due to game script. They were behind for a lot of the game against Tampa Bay and forced to pass. And they passed a good amount in their first game, too, against the Rams. And they went into overtime, too. So you had the additional play volume there as well. And yes, when you got into overtime, it was mostly, if not all run. I can't remember. Was it all run plays in overtime when they closed that off against the Rams?
I did not watch that, but I do remember looking at one of the applets for the box score at the end or the play-by-play, and it was just run.
Yeah. But anyway, I do think that this is something where we can expect it to regress. I don't think Goff is going to have this amount of volume every week. That being said, I still think he'll be above average. This is a good offense.
So I had a couple of notes here. So they're at a 61% pass rate, 45 dropbacks a game, and that's still negative 5% pass rate over expected. So like you said, it is the game script causing the pass, and then I think it is a common trend where when a quarterback is not throwing efficiently, that leads to more volume, because when you don't throw efficiently, that's how you get behind. And I do note that in terms of like the per efficiency, they're minus 2 touchdowns under expected per game. So in each game, if you're just looking at neutral efficiency, Purdy should have had 2 more touchdowns. And so to me, that kind of suggests it's like you're kind of looking like at a regression candidate in both ways. His points should go up, or sorry, his efficiency should go up. The volume should come down, and I think that should lead actually to net higher scoring. And I also wonder, I know this is not the tight end section, but I also wonder if maybe they get Laporta more involved, because he was a key touchdown scorer for them last year.
Yeah, I certainly think that makes sense. Definitely some interesting stuff to go over when we get to Laporta, but won't spill the beans on that just yet. The other outlier that I wanted to look at was Derek Carr, the most efficient quarterback in the league by far. A big part of this is being driven by the 2 Rashid Shaheed deep bomb plays, right?
Yeah.
He's got an extremely high touchdown rate, because what's happened in both of the games is the Saints got out to a lead and then they just didn't have to throw anymore. And this last week against the Cowboys, they were able to score at will, and Kamara put 4 touchdowns in. And so, Carr didn't have to throw a ton. And so you end up with this really low volume, which is why he's, on the left side of the chart, he's below average for his expected fantasy points from passing. But then you end up with this hyper efficiency because he scored touchdowns, they got up, they stopped throwing.
Yeah. And one thing that they're minus 10, so they're 10% under their expected pass rate. So even though game script has led them against passing, they've actually been passing less than kind of expected. And then I also sort of wonder, with that kind of low volume and drop back, I saw some note from one of the kind of ball watchers that one of the things that Kubiak is doing is he's avoiding those kind of true dropbacks where he's essentially he's not making Carr have to work very hard. And so I know in your note you'd sort of said maybe the Eagles will be able to make Carr have to work a little harder.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really interesting game this week, where we just are coming off a Monday night game where we saw the Eagles really fail to get any kind of pressure on the Falcons. Now, that might have something to do with the fact that the Eagles were respecting the run so much from Bijan, because the Falcons were just absolutely feeding him, and a lot of the offense was going through him. But the Eagles were failing to get pressure on Kirk Cousins. And so I know that the Saints are supposed to have a worse offensive line. I haven't checked their pass blocking rating, but I wonder if it's such small sample, they haven't been throwing very much, that there might not be a ton of signal there. But I think it's going to be a good test against the Eagles. And if you ask me to divine what's going to happen for Derek Carr and where he'll kind of move on this chart, I think it's almost a given that his efficiency has to come down. The adjusted yards per attempt can't stay this high, really. I mean, unless they're just going to keep blowing teams out over and over, and I don't think that's the case.
Right, 40% pass rate and keep completing bombs as Shaheed. That'll boost the AYA pretty good. So just I've the Saints, their pass block win rate is 66%, which is 8th highest in the league. I do think that's probably a lot of that has to do with them avoiding those true dropbacks where they're not having to do 5 and 7 step drops, and it's a lot quicker stuff. But we will definitely have to see against Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not here poo-pooing Derek Carr. I think he is in. We talk about these offenses that are the haves versus the have-nots. The Saints all of a sudden have become a have from a standpoint. Despite Dennis Allen's best efforts, Dennis Allen is getting absolutely bailed out here and keeping a job that he probably has no business keeping. But Kubiak is
the Saints should hire Kubiak. At the way things are going, they should hire him as the head coach next year, rather than have Kubiak leave to be head coach somewhere else and then keep Dennis Allen. I
Could
did.
you imagine?
I actually expect that to be like on the current trend. I expect that to be what happens. One thing though about the Carr, like it really is, and Kubiak. I think we really do have to see them in a game where their back gets against the wall, and like it's clearly bullish that they've like absolutely body bagged two teams. Like that doesn't just happen by accident. But I do think it'll be interesting to see how they react in games where actually you do have to pass down to get back into this.
Yeah, are you willing to like crown the Saints as one of these, put them in the category of the 49ers, the Rams, the Vikings, the Dolphins, if they take it to the Eagles this next week? If they're able to go out and continue to look really efficient on offense and beat the Eagles, do you think it's fair to put them in that category?
It's hard. If they do it to the Eagles too, it will be really hard not to. I don't think the Eagles impressed. I guess we just saw them last night. We were pretty wary on the Falcons, and then the Falcons were able to look pretty good. That would be my one note. Like maybe the Eagles' defense isn't that good this year either. But if they just body bag 3 teams in a row, that would be a very like strong sign at least.
Yeah. Another one that I thought was interesting. Another, he's still looking a little bit like an outlier, but he's more in line with the rest of the quarterbacks, is Kyler Murray, who had an incredible week 2, finding Marvin Harrison for some spectacular plays. If you didn't watch that game, those highlights are worth looking up. They were pretty fun. And also,
if you're watching this podcast and you somehow didn't see the Marvin Harrison touchdowns, you should.
Yeah, I don't know who I'm talking to here. That hasn't watched the Marvin Harrison touchdowns that's in our audience right now. The thing you may have missed though, if you weren't watching the whole game, Kyler looked really good running the ball. He had a couple scrambles. He had one that was a really long scramble. I'm not sure exactly how many yards it was, but he looked kind of like vintage Kyler Murray, and not just the extending the play behind the line of scrimmage, but really making the defense pay and punishing them with a big explosive run downfield.
Yeah, that's pretty fun. I think it's pretty straightforward from the data here. You're looking at 58 rush yards a game. You're looking at 9.8 adjusted yards per attempt. That's higher than the per. That's what what we're showing here. 9.8 adjusted yards per attempt. So you're getting the efficiency from him throwing. You're getting the efficiency from him running. He's playing well. I think that's it. That's pretty straightforward.
Here's a fun question. If you had to pick right now, rest of season, do you want Kyler Murray or Lamar Jackson?
Oh my God, that feels like a real week 2 gotcha question, doesn't it? Where
I think it's legitimate though. Kyler, like
they weren't going that far apart.
And think about how we framed Kyler, just 3 seasons ago. What was that, the season when he and Jalen Hurts were going, back to back, like in the 5th, 6th round, right?
Right. I don't know. So, what's tough about that is Lamar did play Kansas City, and then I guess the Raiders always have one of those defenses where they always like play teams tough. They have Max Crosby, who always causes teams havoc. So I want to give the Ravens a little bit of credit for having played tough defenses. Then remember, Kyler has played. He played the Bills as well, and so you have to give him some credit there. I don't know. I think that's a lot closer. I think probably you probably slight tilt Kyler now, just because they have been efficient throwing the ball, and you kind of believe in their pass catching targets a little bit more now. But that one does feel like something where if these guys could be very, very close by the end of the year.
Yeah, I think it's pretty close. The other point, very slightly in Kyler's favor, is I think it's reasonable to say, just still we've got a little bit of the mystery box remaining with Marvin Harrison, where we have the signal from one game where, okay, this guy looks very good, but it's such a small sample. We really don't know exactly what he is in the league yet. We have more of an idea of what Zay Flowers is, and Zay Flowers is very good, but I think it's reasonable to say that Marvin Harrison's like true ceiling, like above 90th percentile outcome, he's lapping Zay Flowers. Like Zay is good, but he's not going to get to the Marvin Harrison like true ceiling outcome. So I think you get a point in the Kyler column there, and then also from tight end, and we'll look at this when we get to the tight end charts. But I think it's reasonable to pass the torch to Trey McBride as maybe the tight end 1 in fantasy. If not the tight end 2, and we'll talk about who could be tight end 1 later. Spoiler alert, it was the guy on the thumbnail for this show.
I agree with that.
Moving in a more disappointing direction on the chart, guys that we're kind of a little worried about now. Trevor Lawrence. I mean, you can use the excuse that it was rainy and the Browns have a good defense, but man, and I mean, I know they were missing Evan Ingram too. He had that freak.
It's the same thing every year with this guy, where it's like some of his advanced stuff looks really good, and then you say, oh, well, his receivers had a 23% drop rate, and like that's an outlier. That's going to make anyone's stats look bad. But I feel like we're hearing that every year with Trevor Lawrence. Like, oh, his receivers just dropped the ball. And maybe, like, that makes me think that maybe, how do I say this? Maybe we are looking at somebody who's, like, an above average QB who's just, like, destined to a career of, like, poor stats because the team around him is bad. But that in fantasy football, that doesn't matter. Like... Tell me the path to Trevor Lawrence's receiving weapons actually becoming much better, and then him actually scoring well.
Yeah, I mean, to play devil's advocate here, I would say you've got a lot of runway for Brian Thomas Jr. to be pretty good.
Yes, that's the answer.
That's like the strongest answer, right? And then I'm not willing to say like it's all the fault of the weapons. I think a big part of this could definitely be, the coaching and the play calling. Like it hasn't been great since, Doug Peterson, Press Taylor took over there. They've been able to put some stuff together for stretches, but never anything super sustained where Trevor's been, at the top of the quarterbacks for fantasy performers or real life stat accumulators. So yeah, he's just, to me, it's just looking like he's kind of a middle of the pack guy.
Right.
So like Trevor Lawrence or Brock Purdy, given all the injuries the 49ers have to their weapons rest of the season.
That one feels pretty close. I do think Purdy is probably another one who's kind of a regression candidate. Or at least that's what I don't note that he might be a regression candidate. Because he's another one where he's been under expectation on touchdowns, and maybe that's some of Ayuk. Maybe who knows what that's related to, but he's somebody who could score a little bit higher if he becomes positive efficiency on touchdowns. I like Purdy's he's such a hard one to project, because if when the 49ers get behind, normally they trail with good efficiency and they do put up points, and I guess that's what we should expect going forward. Whereas Trevor Lawrence is like that feels a little bit more like a quagmire, where O-line not great, receivers dropping passes. And it's not like he's some special talent either. Like, I'd say I'm definitely not feeling great about Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, I mean, in that direct one-to-one comparison between Lawrence and Purdy, I think, this is something where if you can figure out like these big macro trends for fantasy and just apply them, I feel like it can go a long way. And so one of the things that I first noticed in my fledgling fantasy career many years ago was, if I just pay attention to who the really good offensive lines are and draft the running backs behind the best offensive lines, that's a really easy way to get good running back production, right? And now I feel like the easy, like that super, it's way too simple. This sounds like it shouldn't work. It shouldn't be this easy. Cheat code is if you just have a quarterback that's in one of these like Shanahan style scam systems where the offense is designed exceptionally well and they give the quarterback lots of easy looks, like the Saints, like the Vikings, like the Dolphins, you're just those quarterbacks are going to produce efficiently because the offense is well designed. You're simply playing with a stack deck against these defenses.
Right. And it certainly seems like Trevor Lawrence's offense, the Doug Peterson one. And I remember Sean Siegel said that Doug Peterson might just be done the way like a player is done, that maybe the game has evolved beyond his capabilities of being effective.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly looking like Shane Steichen may have been the brains behind the operation when they were having their run in Philly.
Success.
And they won the Super Bowl.
Right.
Yeah. Let's see. Last note I had on QB charts is this group, the law firm of bad QBs, if you will, this Levis, Watson, Williams, and Young, all down at the bottom of the chart here. Deshaun Watson barely eking ahead of, just above average, his 13 expected fantasy points from passing or thereabouts. Big part of that just came from the extreme volume. That's what expected fantasy points is. It's a volume measure. But the Browns are throwing the ball a lot. They're not doing so particularly successfully, but they are trying. But I mean, even with that, I couldn't imagine starting any of these guys. Like, none of these are viable starters in a managed league. Caleb actually showed some signs of life this week. Like, it looks like the player is not a total, and I didn't think he was a total bust following week one. I just thought that the team, the coaching.
We saw some positive signs. We saw some positive plays where it was third down. He had to do something, and he pulled something out. Right.
And he was doing less of the, Caleb the Magician stuff that made people fall in love with him when he was at USC. Like, I'm going to extend the play. Off platform. Oh my God, a broken play, huge touchdown. Like, he was doing less of that, trying to make magic happen, and more of like I'm going to drive the bus. I'm operating the offense. I'm going through my reads. I'm finding the open guy. I'm making the throws. And it wasn't like he was just making like easy throws either. He had a couple really impressive throws too, where it was like, okay, that was like a lot of arm talent, and he diagnosed the coverage correctly and got to the right. Like, I don't think Caleb is bad. I think
it might that looks like a have-not offense.
Right.
The O-line isn't good. The play calling is just really bad. Really, really bad.
What was it, like 45 pressures or something ridiculous like that on him? Like,
yeah. And like you had stuff like where it was they were running on early downs a lot when it wasn't working at all. So they're getting forced into these third and long situations. When they did pass, it was like screens and design touches to these like fucking dust balls. And it's like, you have DJ Moore. Why not do the design touches to DJ Moore? This, like, I don't know. But I'm with you where it looks like there's definitely the talent that got him selected first overall is there. I guess we're probably getting some more rookie growing pains than maybe we would have wanted. But bigger story probably is per O-line play, per play calling. And you're going to have to see that stuff improve kind of dramatically to feel better about the offense.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you're the Bears, the best thing you can do is just clean house on your coaching staff right now. Like, you're at the start of this extremely talented young player's career. You have a ton of draft capital that you got to invest this year in an elite wide receiver in Rhamondre, elite generational quarterback talent in Caleb Williams. You've got all these pieces, and I think it's such a mistake to just wait this season and say, surely this Tiger will change his stripes after, like, you know what Eberflus is. Like, if you didn't know what Waldron was because, I don't know, like, you didn't watch any of the Seattle games while he was there, like.
But I just to bring it back, I guess the takeaway is this Bears offense becomes a shy away offense, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Unfortunately, it went from one we were kind of sneaky excited about to like really excited about to, it might be a stay away.
And yeah, I think all of these are stayaways here. With Levis, like if you saw the play where he just freaked out and did like the weird lateral when he was getting sacked and led to a fumble, which was just like terrible decision making. If you want a silver lining for the Titans, it's that the whole show is Calvin Ridley, and so maybe it's functional there for him only. I mean, Tony Pollard's also getting a lot of work too, but like Levis is not startable in any format.
Unfortunately, he is not. We got a couple of questions here. I like don't like just walking by questions. We got one from and we're gonna go through them. Got one. Are we leaving the light on for Justin Herbert in fantasy? I think for Herbert you need like one of those like negative game strip games, where they're trailing. This team does not want to pass the ball. They're at a 45% pass rate, negative or 11% under expected on that. And then Herbert is real good. We know he's really good, but his receiving around him is not. So that makes it pretty thin to get strong efficiency there. So I think he was going so cheap in best ball that like a lot of the stuff that I'm saying that was kind of priced in. So I don't think you need to feel bad. But if in like a 12 person or 12 team 1 QB league, I really don't see any reason to start Herbert. And would be like even in kind of daily stuff I think it would be kind of questionable. Like you'd really need the stars to align, to consider to make a strong consideration for Herbert.
Yeah, agree 100% with your assessment there.
And then should I drop that? This is an interesting one. Should I drop Fields for Sam Darnold?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, I think so. So, yeah, we kind of seen the Fields show with the Steelers. So, like, fortunately, they're not making him do anything that's going to get himself benched. Unfortunately, that kind of usage leads to 8 expected fantasy points from passing, and so that understates his actual his volume a little bit, because you do have the rushing stuff, and then you can make the case that a lot of his big plays got pulled back from penalties. So like maybe it could have been a 22 point game for Fields, but I think you can kind of look elsewhere. I'm dropping Fields this week in FFPC managed.
You know what is the funniest timeline? I mean, it's the timeline that we're living in, but Justin Fields is very well the absolute best pick at quarterback you could make in the Eliminator, provided that he starts the whole season. His floor is exceptional. He's averaging 42 rush yards a game. He has a little bit of ceiling. Like if those big plays don't get called back, or he runs a little hot and gets a touchdown, or the Steelers end up behind, like that's how you access the ceiling. And the floor is good. Like, and he was an 18th round pick. Like, it's so funny. No one, if you had asked people going into the season, is Justin Fields
It's complete opposite of what we expected. It's like He's not going to start many games, but when he does, oh baby.
Turns out he's an eliminator ass pick.
and then this one isn't much of a question, it's more of a statement. Is Bo Nix finished or is he done? Yeah,
yes.
Looking pretty rough.
Yeah, he just looks like he's drowning, man. It's not, unless you're a masochist, like it's not.
Or you're his mother. Mrs. Nix, you can still play Bo in fantasy. Anybody else?
Yeah, Mrs. Nix, you absolutely cherish, the years that your son has in the league, and he seems like a super nice young man. And to be fair to him, one of the best quarterbacks in the world, just not one of the 32 best.
Right, unfortunately. And maybe this is a future dynasty question, not really within the scope here, but I do wonder how much is Sean Payton, the GM, Sean Payton, the coach. But after making that excuse for Bryce Young last year and seeing how it's paid off, not in a rush to make that for Bo Nix here.
Especially if Payton is still coaching next season, which you have to assume that the Broncos are in such a terrible spot. Their roster is entirely devoid of talent, and they're stuck with Sean Payton, who looks like a guy that just stepped out of like the cryo freezer. He's just stuck in the past and does not show any signs of being willing to change. So pour one out for, if you know any Broncos fans, just give them a hug.
Yeah, for sure. So should we move on here?
Yeah, I think that about covers it on the quarterback chart here.
Okay, and excuse me while I zoom out a little bit here. There we go. And so this is our running back snaps and usage chart. So with running back being such a volume-driven position, obviously we focus in on those rush attempts, and then I feel like I try to explain this every week. We want routes. We want to look at routes over targets because in the vast majority of cases, a running back getting a target is more often than not a check down or an accident in the play that wasn't the intention. And so it's hard to kind of pin that in on the skill of the running back with few exceptions. CMC not playing, but he is one of the few exceptions. And so we basically want the guy who's on the field for when they can receive the check down. We look at pass block as well. It's not fantasy useful, but or it's not the pass block in itself doesn't score points, but it's helpful context to know who is being trusted to pass block for the offense's main player, and then run block. We're building out the complete picture for how they're on the field, but really, who cares?
Yeah, man. The first one that stood out to me, now that we've got double the sample size that we had last week, is Rhamondre Stevenson's role is incredible. For where he was going in drafts, like this guy is looking like the smash of all smashes, and it doesn't even seem to matter that the Patriots are not particularly fun offensively. They're not scoring lots of touchdowns. He is just getting there through sheer volume.
And then one interesting piece as well. So obviously the efficiency hasn't been great, but they do seem to have played some tough run defenses, and so hopefully for them that if they can get some softer defenses, then maybe the what you call it, maybe the efficiency can be a little bit better.
Yeah, just a little note for this week. They are the Thursday night game playing against the Jets. Every one of the Patriots' offensive linemen is listed with an injury on their most recent injury report from practice. And so it's looking like they might I'm trying to remember who. There's one of their offensive linemen has an injury that sounds a little bit more serious, and everyone else just seems like kind of banged up. But there's one that's a slightly more serious injury. I'm wondering if that's going to impact their ability to run the ball. Now they are against the Jets. I haven't looked at how good the Jets.
So did you say that the Jets have a lot of O-line on the
No,
injury report?
The Patriots.
Patriots.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it right now. The Jets are one of the best teams. They're the fourth best team in the NFL in run stuff rate.
Okay. Yeah. So
per ESPN.
Yeah, might not be the week.
Not this week.
Yeah.
Probably, maybe not this week. Don't want to be too deterministic, but probably not this week.
Right. Let's see another role that I feel like people were ready to say it was Jover for this guy after week 1 when he had a really costly fumbled into the end zone, and his backup, the previously much maligned Tank Bigsby, outproduced him on fewer carries as far as total rush yards. But Travis Etienne's role is still very strong. Now, granted, Bigsby did injure his shoulder this week. He did play after the shoulder injury, but he didn't get any offensive snaps after the shoulder injury. It was just special teams. So I'm going to be curious to see what that actually is. Is it just something minor? Is it going to be something that actually impacts him? Will this affect Etienne's workload going forward for the positive? But just as a whole, Etienne's workload still looks very, very good.
The only thing I wonder about Etienne is I saw him go in like the third round a lot, on FFPC. I'm sure he was going later on underdog, but I think even with this solid workload, I think that was probably still an overpay, but he's definitely a running back where, when he's going around the end of it, like, I'm just trying to think of a way you can play him, is when he's going around the end of a draft in the dailies on underdog, like, he's definitely somebody where if you're going to try and play a bounce back week for the Jags, Travis Etienne is probably a pretty strong candidate for that.
Yeah, the other thing is the Jags have struggled. Like, they have not gotten a ton going offensively, so it would not surprise me in the slightest. When teams are struggling, they're just grasping at like, oh my God, we got to get something to work. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if they're just like, you know what, let's just give the ball to this guy 20 times. Because we've seen them do that in the past where they're like, just give it to Etienne a bunch of times. And it'll sort it out. So I wouldn't be surprised at all with them struggling here. They're going to want to change something up, see if they can get something going. Right.
Yeah. And I think, I think that is definitely the way to try and play Etienne.
Yeah, when he's relatively cheap in whatever format it is that you're playing, be it salary cap DFS, if he's priced down in a week, that the role is there where he's going to get the touches, and so if you're getting to basically buy those touches for really cheap, that's good. And same thing in draft style, the battle royales, if he's going undrafted or going really cheap, the role is there. But really in the battle royales, even like the dog bowl, the 12-mans, the goal line stand too, you can pretty much always get running back volume at the end of those. You could have gotten Devin Singletary. He was going undrafted the most. Brian Robinson, like those guys were regularly available, in the 6th round of a 12-man draft. So the volume is there in spades if you want it cheaply. Another guy who's getting the volume in spades, but doing even less with it than Travis Etienne is doing, is DeAndre Swift, who's right above him on the chart. Got a pretty good role. I think the question that we have to ask ourselves here is,
how long can he play like dog shit and still get the ball? Right? That's the question.
Yeah, well put. And the Bears already are showing. This was one of the things where I mentioned, like, we're starting to see some trends, poke out of the dirt, the first little leaves and sprouts coming out. The Bears coaching staff has started to realize, we should not be giving this guy the ball as much, because Khalil Herbert finally started to get some work here in week 2. Week 1, he got damn near nothing. Week 2, we saw his role grow. You think that's a trend?
Yeah. I think we should expect, and who knows on timing? Like, who knows how stubborn a coaching staff can be? But I think it's a pretty fair expectation for Swift to get phased out, and it may happen suddenly. I don't want to it's hard to be too confident on that, but he's playing badly. He's playing very, very badly, and you see like stuff like his yardage under expected he's way under expectation on on PFF, on next gen stats, and then you see the run block win rate is actually pretty solid on their O-line. So like their O-line actually from a run blocking perspective actually might be decent, but he's just playing very poorly. So it's tough to see Swift getting that much run much longer, and I'm definitely hopeful for the Khalil Herbert bags going forward.
Yep, couldn't agree more. Man, this guy is exciting, and just as a reminder for how these charts work, this is aggregating the usage week over week. So right now we just have an average from week 1 and week 2. So guys who saw a major change in their role from week 1 to week 2, you're not going to see that reflected, as much here. If their role was way smaller week 1, it's bigger week 2. And the guy I'm thinking of specifically here is Zach Charbonnet, who, man, Zach Charbonnet's price was very wrong in best ball drafts because what he got you in week 1 when he was just the backup, and granted he ran hot and got a touchdown, right? But like that level of usage for where he was going in best ball drafts, that is exactly what you got, what you were paying for, right? And then you have the contingent upside, which is there is some probability that Kenneth Walker misses a game or multiple games, and then Zach Charbonnet's value increases. What he's going to produce in fantasy increases. That contingent upside was not priced in at all for Zach Charbonnet because he got a lot of work and did pretty well with it. I mean, if you look at the next gen stuff on him, it wasn't great. He's not terribly efficient. He's not grading super well in PFF, but he's just one of those backs who's like, but damn it, he can do it all. He doesn't do.
Well, the fact that he was also getting targets,
yes,
and receptions, and so you're not just relying on, okay, so he's in the game now and he's going to get 40 yards. God help us, please get a touchdown.
Right.
You have the goal line work. You have they trust him to catch the ball. So even on a week where he was relatively inefficient on the ground, he still got pretty close to 20 points just because of, like you said, how multifaceted he is when he plays.
Jack of all trades, master of none. Doesn't really matter though when you're a big-bodied running back like him. Like that's pretty good. That's all we can ask for. So. And
we're dropping Kenny McIntosh this week, in case that wasn't clear.
Yes, yeah. Zach Charbonnet just gobbled up all the work. It is, if Kenneth Walker's out, it's Zach Charbonnet's world, and we're just living in it. And the Seahawks offense looked revitalized compared to how they looked week 1, so that was encouraging. Shout out to Jay Fresh from the Deposit Kingdom, who was off his showdown Millie Maker win. Not sure if anyone was paying attention, but on Sunday he was live to literally win a back-to-back Millie in the big Millie Maker on the main slate with a Seahawks double stack, and man, that would have been pretty fun. But yeah, Seahawks offense looked good. As long as Kenneth Walker is out, Zach Charbonnet looks like a fantastic play. You can, if you've got him on a lineup because you drafted him for the contingent value or what have you, that's a plug and play as long as Walker's out.
Yeah.
The next back that I wanted to talk about is a guy that is right next to Charbonnet here on the chart. But man, another guy whose usage in week 2 was just truly absurd. Probably shouldn't have gotten the usage that he got, to be frank. And it's not because he wasn't efficient with it. No, he was very efficient with it. It's just because his team was way out of the game and he was still in there getting meaningless carries. And you think that a team would want to protect a superstar like De'Von Achane because he looks extremely electric. If we had to redraft right now, even in a world where CMC was healthy, I think you could make an argument that Achane should be going right next to CMC, and I wouldn't even be mad at you if you wanted to take him over him.
You would have him as like the 101.
I mean,
or in the top 4 picks.
He's in the mix. I think he's top 4, top 5 picks certainly. He's probably not the 101 because when other backs are healthy in his backfield, he'll get a little bit less work. But he's just so efficient, and he's getting so much passing game work. Like the work he loses when other backs come in is like the least valuable work. So it's just like, oh, darn, he lost 4 touches. Yeah, and those 4 touches, I mean, for any other back, they only project for 2 more points for him. Of course,
well, he's getting, or he's at the very least right now, he's getting all the high leverage picks or touches for his team. Where if this is a really important carry, i.e. on the goal line, if they want to target a running back, it's going to be Achane. Even McDaniels, he got asked, hey, don't you think you should scale back on Achane's touches? He got kind of hurt, and he said something along the lines of, actually, he's doing so well, I kind of want to increase his touches.
I love him. He's so good. But yeah, just a quick note on the injury concern, because I see so many people talk about but he's small, so he can't hold up. There's no way it's going to work. I mean, no running back can hold up, guys. All of these guys are going to get injured. If you don't get injured as a running back, you ran super pure. Right. So if you look at this chart, by the end of the season, half of these names will have missed a game. That's what it is.
Right.
So
or may no longer be on the chart.
Right, might not be on the chart at all because they're out for the season. God, I mean, knock on wood. We don't wish injury on any of these guys. We love watching them and want to see them succeed. With the exception of a couple total pieces.
But it's that kind of association bias where you see a running back miss a game and he's small, injury prone.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't think anybody if let's say the injury that happened to Pacheco. Don't wish it, not happy about it. But if the injury that happened to Pacheco happened to Achane, everybody would say, "Oh yeah, this is the risk that you took. He's injury prone." But nobody said anything even remotely like that for Pacheco. It wasn't even a thought.
Yeah, very very well put. Yeah, so just please guys, no one victory lapping injuries or saying that you knew that was going to happen when a player gets injured. If you say that a guy's going to get injured, chances are you're right. So just
yeah.
But other than Achane, another guy whose role looking even better after week 1, definitely to me looking like a trend right here grouped with Achane and Charbonnet is Tony Pollard. To me, looking like the clear 1A on the Titans, which is great for his fantasy value because if he wasn't the clear 1A, I don't think him or Spears are very useful just because of how bad this team is going to be. But
when you say the 1A, you don't mean he's the 1A to Spears' 1B. Or is that what you mean? That he's you're saying that he's slightly ahead?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you interpret it differently?
It feels a little bit more like he's a little bit better than a 1A, where he's kind of the starter, and then to me anyway, Spears is a little bit more not change of pace, but he's got receiving, but certainly in the running game, he's more of a change of pace guy. So he's change of pace in the running. On this team doesn't seem that valuable because that doesn't seem to be what they're interested in doing is throwing to the backs.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And definitely, I think Pollard is the one that he's the back to own on this team. Don't think there's very much value for Spears. I mean, he's got contingent value if Pollard goes down. I mean, if you had to redraft today and Spears and Charbonnet, and assume Kenneth Walker's healthy, but Spears and Charbonnet are going next to each other, do you think that's reasonable? Would you take one over the other?
Oh man, that's a real punch in the gut. So just I pulled up the stats for Spears. So if you're looking at where he kind of charts, so 33% of his team snaps, he's either has a rush attempt or a drop back, and that's 8% in rush attempts, 25% in routes. And so I think that's probably around where Charbs, and maybe a little bit higher than Charbs, would be without an injury. And so I guess he's a little bit higher, maybe standalone value, and then unclear on contingent upside. Likely very strong, very similar sort of contingent upside. But then the question is, how much does that matter with Tennessee not being very functional and Seahawks actually looking good? Just as I think through this, I mean, Spears would be going if we had to redraft today, Spears would be going pretty late, right?
Yeah, no, I'd clearly be Sharps over Spears, just for the record.
Like he's kind of going in, like I almost envision him going in like Khalil Herbert kind of range.
Wow.
Given what we know, I mean, unless the coach says, and I know a coach said, hey, we want these guys to be much closer, and I guess that's still, like, you still have outcomes where it bounces back like this, but you given the price you're paying, you really need that, and it doesn't feel like the most likely right now.
Right. Yeah. One of the other guys who, again, saw his usage increase week over week is Jahmyr Gibbs.
Am I still frozen? I see a comment here where I froze.
No, you're back now.
Okay, my power flickered, unfortunately. So that's probably what that happened there.
Jahmyr Gibbs getting more work, out snapping Montgomery this week, getting more work. We're seeing the thesis behind why he was going at the 1-2 turn playing out, where, people were thinking, well, he's clearly the more talented of the two backs. They spent an incredible amount of draft capital on him. They're going to want to use him more. He'll get the high value touches, and Montgomery will still be involved. He'll get some goal line stuff too, and keep some of the high value touches for himself. But that was the thesis behind Gibbs, and it looks to me like it's playing out. I guess the question I have for you is, seeing what we've seen so far through 2 games, does the Gibbs price at the 1-2 turn seem pretty reasonable to you?
Yeah, it does. It does. I mean, the issue, and this might have been the wrong way to look at it. The issue I always had with the Gibbs price was that I always compared it to the Achane price. And I'm like, I like Achane just as much, if not more, and he's going cheaper. Why do I do Gibbs at the 1-2 turn? But then maybe the answer was Achane, Giga Smash, Gibbs appropriately priced.
Yeah, that's well put.
The way I was looking at it was probably not correct. And so 1-2 turn definitely feels pretty appropriate, if not a tad underpriced. He probably, looking at this kind of usage, you probably take him maybe before like the AJ Brown kind of tier of receivers.
Yeah, that's close. That's close for me. I mean, it's certainly making me think about, gosh, how fun would it be to have a team that has Gibbs and Achane on it as a
right,
hyper fragile kind of team. That would be a little fun.
The other note I have here is it looks like Gibbs is another regression candidate where he's gotten minus, so he's down a 2/3 of a touchdown so he's 2/3 of a touchdown, so 4 points in fantasy below expectation. And so given what we believe about their offensive line and his talent, that should certainly be positive rather than negative.
Yeah, That's a good point. And yeah, so I certainly think that Gibbs' best games are still ahead of him. Definitely a fun one to have. You got to be happy about Jahmyr Gibbs if you've got him on your teams right now. And if a guy where you got the green light to target him in good matchups and, DFS, battle royales, he's just a all around, one of the running backs that you want to play around.
Right.
Here's one who his role is up near the top, right next to it. We talked about how good a role Rhamondre Stevenson has. Man, how about Josh Jacobs and the role becoming even more solidified with the Lloyd to IR news today?
Yeah, that's brutal. Just brutal.
Is Josh Jacobs just going to get 400 touches this year?
I think they're probably going to just feed him until it breaks.
Yeah.
I do remember seeing their other backup Wilson looking fairly good in Brazil when they played the Eagles. So don't want to lose sight of that. I think he can still be a factor. But they're likely, especially short term, gonna heavily focus on Jacobs. I think it is interesting that the Colts run defense that they played against this week, it did seem like particularly bad. Where like they gave up a lot of yardage to Joe Mixon, and then Joe Mixon against the Texans like completely bottled up, and so that's I think that's like kind of important context on like his overall production this week, but role certainly very strong.
Yeah, that is a good point. Let's see, who do the Colts play this week? Anyone fun for us to target here in DFS or BRs?
Colts schedule. So they play the Bears. So load up DeAndre Swift, baby.
I mean, could you imagine, like, if there is a get right spot? So here's the real question: if DeAndre Swift doesn't post a good game against the Colts defense, is it Jover?
Oh, completely Jover. Completely Jover. And you just know that the Bears are going to establish the shit out of it. And I mean, hopefully for their sake, they do get Khalil Herbert more involved. But that just feels like they're going to establish it so hard.
Can't wait. Those were all the notes I had for this chart. I've got a couple on the backups I wanted to talk about. Did you have anyone else you wanted to point out here?
No. I'm happy to move on. I mean, I think I remember you sent me some notes that I maybe want to touch on them quickly. Is do we think Bucky Irving his role is gonna increase? Do just a note on that. White is playing really, really bad. Just really, really bad play from White, and would hope that and that in combination with Bucky playing well does lead to a higher shift to Buck. And then I think you also had a note about what's his name, Deontay Foreman.
Both of them are on the backups chart there.
Oh, okay. I'm just blowing through the backup chart.
No, that's okay. But yeah, with a little context for the Bucky Irving stuff too, Rachaad White did have a minor groin injury. He re-entered the game. He wasn't like held out of the game after he injured his groin. But I think that's opening the window for Bucky Irving. And with a player like Rachaad White, where we can all tell he's bad, he's not efficient. He's got use as a pass catcher, like he's perfectly fine there, but as a rusher, like he is well below what an average NFL back would do in the same circumstances as him. So when you're a player like that and you open up the window to a guy who we don't know how talented Bucky Irving is yet, we've only seen a little bit of him, but what we have seen looks a lot better than what we've seen from Rachaad White. And so I think that, this could very well be the last stop on the train. If you're trying to buy Bucky Irving, like, the time is now. It might.
So that's a home league take, right? Where
right.
you're either trying to get him on your roster if it's a short roster league, or you're trying to trade for him. I don't think that's a situation where you can play it before you see it.
Can't play it in DFS right now. Can't really play it in like a battle royale because Rachaad White is still going to get plenty of the work. You're just hoping. We're trying to get ahead of Bucky looking good on more work, and then the coaching staff coming out and telling us, hey, we're gonna see what we've got here more.
Right, we're gonna play this guy a lot.
Yeah.
Or even in a game where we just get it closer to a 50-50 split, and then people do the trend. Right.
Yeah, really. I mean, really, the greatest tragedy is that we don't have a showdown slate with the Bucs here. Before their next game, because that's the spot where I would jam Bucky. Just before the usage is out there and abundantly clear to everyone, where you could really IKB the projection and say Bucky's usage is going to go up, and we're under projecting his efficiency right now. So I'm just gonna absolutely attack this spot. So little bit of
what I'm hearing is that you're going to call the NFL league office and say it's a travesty that that they're not in prime time.
I need a primetime Bucs game. Yeah.
get them to flex the Bucs into prime time. And then your other note was D'Onta Foreman.
Yeah, so let's move to. I want to move to the backup chart
like,
to show D'Onta Foreman's usage here.
Are we not on the backup chart?
I'm not seeing it.
Are you sure? I mean, Derrick Henry is not usually on the backup chart, but this is the backup chart.
Chat, can you let us know if you're seeing it? It might just be on my end, or it might just be on Dricko's end. But if you're seeing the greater than 40% rush attempts with Bijan Robinson at the top, let us know.
Okay. Does it show now? So Nick, I had a note from Nick that was showing the starter.
Yeah, try and close it out and reshare your screen. I think something may have happened when your power went up there.
Okay. Good call. So.
But yeah, while you get that pulled up, so D'Onta Foreman took over the Browns' backfield this week as far as opportunities are concerned. Ford was still more efficient than him, but Foreman got substantially more work. And I'm a little bit of a D'Onta Foreman truther. I think now, granted, if you're starting to look at D'Onta Foreman advanced metrics and peripherals, they're not going to be pretty. Okay, but my read on D'Onta Foreman is that NFL teams like him because he runs as he is expected to run. Like, hey, the play says do this, and he goes and he does it, and he'll break a tackle here and there. And he's a bigger bodied guy, so he can handle goal line stuff, between the tackle stuff really well. And he's not a total zero in the passing game. Like he can get some receiving work. He's got a little bit of routes here on the chart. I'm wondering, do you think that this is the flippening? Is D'Onta Foreman taking over the backfield over Jerome Ford, or was it a blip?
Here's what I think. I think it's one of those things where when the Browns have a lead and they're salting that lead, I think it is Foreman. Now, that's a pretty thin reading of it, and that is based on where I've got so Foreman, he had 6 touches in the first half, 9 in the second half. And he was kind of even with what's the guy's name, the other running back? I know you just said
it. Ford or Foreman?
Yeah, Ford. I think Ford and Foreman were pretty even in the first half, and then Foreman pulled away in the second half when they had that lead. So that's a thin reading of it, and it's based on like kind of interpretation, because that's really small numbers. But I think that's what makes most sense to me, that they have clear roles in mind for these guys, and when they're ahead, it is going to be the Foreman show.
Okay, yeah, I think that makes sense to me. So yeah, not a full flippening, but definitely, if you were feeling really good about Jerome Ford, hate to burst your bubble on that. Actually, I'm lying. I love to burst your bubble on that. I thought Ford was an awful pick. Sorry, not sorry. But yeah, I mean, I just think that really what it's going to come down to is not that D'Onta Foreman's now this great fantasy asset. It's just, to me, it's almost a stay away because the Browns' offense looks bad too. So
you need a QB change to kind of go after this offense, I think.
Yep. Shall we move on to the efficiency charts?
Tell me if you see the new efficiency chart.
I do. And this, I really like what this chart shows, just because it's easier to kind of visualize how good Rhamondre Stevenson's role is. We already talked about him, so we won't spend a ton of time on it. But I mean, look at this: 8 expected receiving points, or just about, and 16 expected rushing points per game. Like, this guy's set up for a legendary season if this stuff continues. Now, granted, I got into a back and forth with somebody about this. The legendary season, it does contemplate that running back also having positive efficiency. Yes.
I don't want to like close the door on that for Stevenson, but I think that's something that is easy to overlook. That is very important.
Yeah, no, I certainly agree. I don't think, I mean, you're right. We won't close the door on him having positive efficiency. But I think the thesis of the Stevenson play is the volume is there. If you get efficiency,
and you paid a great price for that volume.
Right.
A fantastic price for that volume, which is, I think, your point.
Now, you want to talk about another guy who you got at an absolute screaming bargain basement price for what he's doing is J.K. Dobbins. Now, Dobbins does not have a ton of expected points because, number one, the Chargers don't throw the ball, so how could you get very many receiving expected points? And number two, he didn't have a ton of carries in week one. He had more here in week two, but he's just so efficient. He's leading the league in breakaway yards. Like, I think that, near the end of draft season, we were starting to kind of hammer Dobbins as it became abundantly clear that he was, going to make the team, which that was the reason we were kind of scared of him earlier in the season. The team didn't have any kind of real commitment to him, just $50,000 guaranteed on his contract, guy coming off an Achilles injury, following back-to-back seasons of brutal knee injuries too, where the last time we saw him on the field, he's like dragging a dead leg behind him, still hitting pretty impressive top speed for having a dead leg. Like, I'm certainly not keeping stride with J.K. Dobbins, but I mean, he looks great. Like, can you take the air out of my J.K. Dobbins bull case right now, or are we all in?
So I think you're certainly happy to play J.K. Dobbins until shown otherwise. It's kind of like he doesn't seem to have the long speed anymore. But with how good the O-line is and his vision and kind of ability to make those cuts, you don't need the long speed. Like, and there's certainly been running backs who don't have long speed, but have been kind of crafty in navigating that line of scrimmage, who've made a living, and he's looked really good doing that so far. I think though that it is tough for me to see somebody of that kind of profile becoming like this kind of bell cow. I think even if they tone Zach Moss down, they probably rotate in some of the other guys rather. Oh, sorry, not Zach Moss. Gus Edwards. If they rotate in, I think they'll rotate in other guys. Maybe they will bump Dobbins up a bit, but I think if they give Gus the hook, it'll be to kind of other guys' benefit. Like, let's say either Vidal and then maybe some Patterson as well.
So you're not expecting this monster workload for Dobbins, but I certainly think that 5 weeks from now, he's going to be in this, probably 10 to 15 expected fantasy point band and near the top of that, closer to the 15 expected fantasy points. Because I think they want to give him more touches, I would assume. But I don't, like you said, they're not going to turn him into a huge workhorse or anything. And I mean, the Chargers,
it's really hard to get to 15 as well, just almost purely true rushing.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So I think 10 to 15 is probably like the right range, or the good expected range, and then maybe he adds like 5 on top. Like 5 is a lot, but he adds a little bit on top with his good play and the O-line being good. But at the price you got him, like that is fantastic.
Someone who you're not happy about the price that you got him is Derrick Henry, who is more and more just looking like fancy David Montgomery. He's sitting here in this 10 to 15 expected fantasy point range. If we actually go back one chart, I want to point out the Derrick Henry snap share just to highlight. So there they are at the top of the chart. Derrick Henry and David Montgomery. They're basically the same thing, except I would argue Derrick Henry probably gets fewer high-value touches than David Montgomery because David Montgomery will get the occasional target here and there, and the Lions' offense will certainly happily give him the ball at the goal line. That's not to say that Derrick Henry's not going to get the ball at the goal line. It's just this is the same type of profile, right? Like a guy who's
same type of role. I don't know.
Same type of role. That's better. Yeah.
And like to be honest, when you look at some of the metrics, Derrick Henry looks fine, which is like a disappointing way to describe Derrick Henry because for a long time now he's just been this monster, and I don't think we're seeing that so far this year. So, like from that perspective, that's like Derrick Henry is fine, is disappointing.
Yeah, the thing is, when you're paying a third-round price tag for Derrick Henry, like, fine is not an acceptable outcome if you're trying to make money in your league. If you're trying to root for Derrick Henry while you lose money, then that's a great price to pay. You will do that very successfully.
So, like, in the next-gen stats stuff, he has 0.7 yards over expected per attempt, which, again, is fine. It's
fine.
Good.
Yeah.
It's
my issue is purely with the price, right? The price you're having to pay for Derrick Henry was just not palatable.
Right. You completely overpaid for what you got here. Like, this is like a Javonte Williams, David Montgomery type of bet, unfortunately.
Now hang on, because I'm about to do the biggest heel turn of all time on you, because I'm making it sound like there's just no way that you can play this guy. But what if I told you that he's playing against what could potentially be one of the worst rushing defenses in the league this week? The same one that just gave up 4 touchdowns to Alvin Kamara, the Dallas Cowboys.
Are the Cowboys you're closer to it than I am. Are the Cowboys that bad?
I mean, they just look like they have the same old problems that they've had on defense for the last couple of years, which is they cannot stop a nosebleed in the running game. Like it, and it's almost, as someone who's watched like every Cowboys snap for the last couple of years, you can almost kind of like feel it, like when the team starts losing to the run game, like if you watch the playoffs,
they just crumble.
Yeah, if you watch the playoffs against the Vikings last year, where the Packers, where Aaron Jones was just absolutely decimating them, like you could kind of see them get deflated, and that's happened, for a while for the Cowboys, and so, I mean, watching dusty Alvin Kamara just take it to him really makes me think this might be an offense or a defense to target on the ground. And so, I mean, if there's one spot where Derrick Henry can look like vintage Derrick Henry, where he's ripping off the big 80-yard touchdown runs and just stiff-arming guys.
I know you're kind of like a despondent, sort of like semi-Cowboys fan. are the Cowboys really in that category where like they're in with the Carolina Panthers or in with the Rams, where like this is truly just a god awful run defense? The Colts, I should say.
I don't know that they're like probably all the way as bad as the Panthers.
Maybe below average.
They're definitely below. I'd be very confident in saying that they're below average. Yeah.
And so, with the Ravens, with the Ravens being good, and like this could be a bounce back spot for the Cowboys, but the way the Ravens win, you think, is by like running Derrick Henry down their throat.
Yeah, the Cowboys have a pretty decent pass defense. I mean, not evidenced by the absolute nuke that Derek Carr put up on them with the Rashid Shaheed long touchdown again. But again, that was just like a little bit of efficiency, and then they just ran the ball down their throats. And so, I mean, the other thing is this game could set up to be really fun because the Cowboys will run a lot of plays. If they, especially like if you can get them behind, if Derrick Henry can get up early on them, and then the Ravens are more incentivized to run and just keep feeding Henry, and the Cowboys are down and they're going to pass a lot, like, man, you could have a pretty fun game here, and an interesting way to play it where I don't think a ton of people are super excited to play Derrick Henry after the first 2 weeks.
I love this comment. He has 0 contingent value. It's like completely correct. With his new value, also comes with 0 contingent value. But you also don't want your second 2-3 turn pick to need contingent value.
I think that was more in response to like comparing him to David Montgomery, because in the event where David Montgomery's contingent value is incredible, right? If Jahmyr Gibbs misses time, like I'm absolutely David Montgomery over Derrick Henry, and twice on Sundays. So I think that was more the point, and that's kind of what I'm getting at. It is just like the price in best ball was never reasonable.
Right. And like I'm agreeing with the point. It's also just a really funny way to frame it.
Yes, yeah. Okay, let's go back to the efficiency charts.
The second one.
Yeah, let's get to the second one here. I feel like a lot of the other guys on the first one we either touched on in the volume chart or not too much changed week over week. Another guy I wanted to touch on here, just Jordan Mason with CMC going to IR. Debo, missing multiple games is what it's currently looking like. Man, Jordan Mason just looking like the absolute smash of all smashes in best ball drafts. If you got Jordan Mason teams, you've got to be happy about that. The one caveat that I want to, like the little cold water I want to throw on it, I guess there's 2 caveats. Number one, I think the 49ers offense might be a little worse. They're missing Deebo Samuel. They're missing Christian McCaffrey. They might not be the same super high-powered offense we're used to. I still think they're going to be functional. They have, like Kyle Shanahan is he's a good coach. Like he's going to find a way to make it work. The other thing though is if the 49ers find themselves trailing, Mason is not super involved in the passing game. Like if you look at his expected fantasy points here, it's pretty much all coming to the ground. So
right, he's running. He's out there running routes, but it's like, hey, do you want to throw it to George Kittle,
right,
even Brandon Ayuk, or you want to throw it to Jordan Mason? It's the answer is usually not to throw it to Jordan Mason.
Yeah, I mean, even if Juszczyk is on the field running a route, like I would probably wager that Juszczyk is more likely to get the ball than Mason, provided all things are equal between them. So my caveat would be if the Niners are going into what could be a really tough game script, they're playing against either a team that's elite at stopping the run, which might not matter because, you said that the Jets are one of the best run-stopping defenses, really high success rate against the run. 49ers did not give a shit about that, right? Jordan Mason ran all over him. So maybe it doesn't matter. I think where it matters most is if the 49ers are playing an explosive offense and they might just get too behind to really even be able to run. So that's the little cold water on Mason, more of like a weekly, DFS or Battle Royale kind of lens to view it through. If you've got him in a home league or, a managed league, you're probably starting him most weeks unless you've got some really good options.
Right. There's some downside there, is what you're saying. Even with the work horse role for him.
Okay, the last thing I wanted to do on these running back efficiency charts, and we'll ultimately need to toggle back to the first chart after we do it on this one, but I want to hit you with some rapid fire legendary RB season watch. And so we're going to look at all the guys that are right about that 20 or more expected fantasy points threshold. And I just want you to really quick hit me with a yes or no if you think that a legendary season is on the table for these guys. So Kyron Williams.
Not with the injuries, I don't think. I think it was always like he's a fine player, but I think some of his legendary season case was always on the offense being good, and then some of that being funneling to him. It's hard to see a legendary season for him in the context of all the injuries.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier a really good point about efficiency is part of a legendary season, and you can look at his little tiny bubble, and he has not been very efficient so far. Long season, there's time for that to change, but I definitely think I fall on your side there.
All right. Don't they have O-line injuries?
Yeah.
They have their two best receivers are injured.
Yeah,
that sounds pretty rough to me.
Yeah. Okay, Breece Hall.
Yeah, of course.
Saquon Barkley.
I think maybe this is controversial, but I think that he has a legendary first month of the season.
Okay.
But it's really tough for me to see him having a legendary last month of the season.
It's just, for me, so much of it comes down to the touchdown stuff. Like, right now, it looks like how they're using him as a receiver is basically the same way they use Swift, which, Barkley looks better than Swift. He's
a better receiver. He's got good receiving skills, which is definitely to his credit, to his favor. It's
just the role as far as the receiving work for the primary back for the Eagles doesn't, through 2 games, small sample, doesn't look like it's changed. So, okay.
And he is playing efficiently when you look at the yardage stuff, or relatively efficiency, and with thanks to the O-line. But somebody, he is in that older range, and I know he's had a really good overall career, but in the context of kind of declining metrics for him in prior seasons, and then even behind the really good O-line, only kind of on his next gen stats are pretty mediocre, and him being older, it's really hard for me to see him maintaining a good level of efficiency that you need.
We may have to change the title of this stat chasing to 2 Nerds Cope that they didn't draft enough Saquon Barkley. Okay, next on our legendary RB watch, De'Von Achane.
Yeah, I think we touched on this on the reasons why. Yes.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the previous efficiency chart just for the last couple to round it out. Rhamondre Stevenson, we already touched on. You said probably a no because of the efficiency. How about Alvin Kamara?
I mean, I think I feel similarly to how I do about Saquon, where if you look at the long-term trends, the efficiency's been down for him, so it's hard for me to see that kind of this kind of great efficiency to continue. However, with the price that you got him, especially on Underdog, where I think he was cheaper than FFPC. FFPC, he was kind of fourth round, fifth round, which you were getting bites at some good receivers there still. I think I think especially on Underdog, he could be a really and he probably is already locked in as a really high advance rate player, and could still get there on FFPC with the higher price tag, and still I mean honestly still make noise in the playoffs, but probably not a 101 sort of legendary season, I don't think.
Yeah. I think when we look back on this season, he's a pretty strong candidate to kind of be in the mold of the Josh Jacobs shark jump season, insane advance rate, just drags a bunch of teams to the playoffs, and then, the age catches up to him. What we've seen in the underlying metrics, comes home to roost, and he's just not able to keep it up in the playoffs. All right, last one, Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah. And there's another one we already talked about, I believe.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the tight end charts.
Yep. And here we go. And so this is tight end utilization and efficiency. And the chart part is what percentage of team dropbacks were they running a route. And then for completeness, just because it helps us get the full picture, what does their pass blocking look like as well? So then when you combine the two, what percentage of their team dropback were they actually on the field?
Yeah, so I wanted to start this chart. I think the best way to look at this tight end chart is I want to look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so we're going to start with the good. And the good is, first, Trey McBride, incredible targets per route run, good ADOT, even with, Marvin Harrison having his big day, Trey McBride still was there as an integral part of the offense. This guy looks like he will be either the tight end 1 or tight end 2 for years to come for redraft.
Yeah. Incredible tight end pick. Incredible tight end.
Yeah. The next one this one is, I think, maybe a little murkier, but Hunter Henry sitting here with a 25% targets per route run, pretty good ADOT, 7.0 ADOT. However, his week 2 game is doing a ton of heavy lifting here, right? He was just hyper targeted, leading receiver on the Patriots by a country mile. Honestly, if you didn't watch this game, number 1, I don't blame you. Number 2, go back and watch some of it and just take a look at how the Patriots ran their offense, because it was all Hunter Henry and Rhamondre Stevenson. That was it, pretty much. Honestly, the Patriots should have won this game, but they just ended up too conservative. They really cost themselves the game. They probably should have beat the Seahawks if they had just been a little bit more aggressive. But
so
anyway,
I do wonder. I wonder a little bit if this is kind of a sign that the Seahawks are like a tight end funnel, because and maybe I'm not maybe I'm reading it wrong, but Hunter Henry has not been like a 25% targets per run guy for his career. He's been kind of closer to somewhere between 12 and 15, and then you get the red zone looks, and that's how you win with Hunter Henry. And I'm not saying that he's going to go to 12 to 15 over the course of the season, but that the long view stuff there with Henry does give me a little bit of pause there, especially with, like you said, we've only had 2 weeks, and then one of those is week 2, which is boosting this a lot. I have a little bit more caution there. However, with the cost that you paid, you're clearly delighted.
And for waivers, for example, he's probably the best thing out there by far on waivers right now. If you're in a managed league, right?
I think Hunter Henry was drafted. You're talking about you're not talking
more
about FFPC.
Yeah, more home league. Yeah, FFPC, he's gonna be rostered.
Right. If you're struggling at tight end, and let's say you have an Evan Engram and you need someone to fill in, he is a strong pickup.
Yeah. Other guys in the good category, George Kittle doing his part to really try and help the 49ers make up for the lost production from CMC. Man, it's kind of setting up to be a George Kittle monster season, where because a lot of the time the frustrating thing with George Kittle historically has been they just don't need him. He's not necessary for them to win and hang a ton of points on an opponent. But the more key components of the offense that go down, the more necessary George Kittle becomes. And
right.
Whenever
he's very important. Kittle is this offense almost has to run through George Kittle this week.
Yeah, and whenever he's called on, I don't remember many games where George Kittle's getting a lot of targets where he's not doing something with them. The guy's a baller. So George Kittle, the trend is upward here. It's going to be fun to watch him here while the 49ers weapons are diminished. And then the last guy that I had in the good category, and honestly, good is not kind enough for this guy because, in my opinion, this is the tight end one overall rest of season is Brock Bowers. 27% targets per route run. And this ain't no Hunter Henry, like, oh, he did it all from one big game, where he got a bunch of targets force-fed to him thing. Like, no, Brock Bowers is just getting targets. And look at how many routes he's running. He's not, like, he ran, 65% of the routes. Like, so, and believe me.
65% of the routes and then 35% target per run last game. And 71% over the average of the two games, 27% targets per run over the average. But like it what's crazy is that he's already he's already one of the top 5. Like he's already I don't know, top 5 in scoring already, in just the last 2. And then you do kind of like the mental adjustment for like, okay, he's a rookie. So they're actually going to ramp up his workload. They're going to ramp up the routes he's running. They're probably going to add more variety to the routes that he's running. And then by the end of this, by week 17, it could just be like, it could just be goodbye. Like, this is probably a week 2 overreaction as well, but it doesn't feel like it. Where like he could be like he could just by next year, when we're doing a redraft on FFPC or best ball on FFPC, he's probably a top 3 pick.
Oh, he's the 101 next year on FFPC.
Probably, yeah.
That's
what I
I'll
had
say
in
it
my
if
heart.
you won't.
Okay, I'm glad. That's what I had in my heart, and I appreciate that you had the braveness, the courage to actually say it.
Because look, here's what the other part of it too is the Raiders this week. So week 1, I was so extremely frustrated with the Raiders because they just made many donkey mistakes, right? Like it did not look good. But this week they actually threw the ball, like they were willing to pass. They had a really high pass rate, and so I was a little encouraged there. And they got the ball to their best players, like Devontae Adams and Brock Bowers, both 8, and that was basically it. Like they just like, these are our best players. If we want to win the game, we got to get them the ball. So I'm like a little bit encouraged by the Raiders not being total donkeys. I think they definitely are not like, they're not as sharp as some of the sharper teams out there, but I also don't think that they're like the complete.
Their coaches don't
idiots.
lose the game for them.
Yeah.
Well,
they did in week 1, but
we had a question here. Are we buying the pass rate over expected? I mean, I think you kind of have to.
Yeah.
So they had a 71% pass rate, over 2 games, 6% over expected, and it's like, they did say over the offseason that the plan was to establish the run, but then you look at the backs that they have, which is what are their names again?
Alexander Madison, Zamir White.
Yeah, I know their names. I'm bad with names though. And then you look at the receivers they have, which is Devontae Adams and Brock Bowers, and it's like maybe passing is actually how they win, how they move the ball, and that's how they look at it. So yeah, I think you have to tentatively buy it.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I'm willing to buy it is I just needed to see it I needed to see that they were willing to do it. That's all. You know, like
against the Ravens too.
Because this is the thing, like they're gonna have to do it. Like how else? If pretend that the Raiders like truly in their heart of hearts want to run the ball, and so they maybe a couple weeks down the road they get away from the pass. They're really feeling themselves, right? And they're like, we're gonna go into this game and we're gonna establish it and dominate them out of the gate. And when that doesn't work, like at least now I know that they know, like, oh yeah, we can always just throw the ball. So that's the thing that I'm looking at.
And what's really fun as well is like Minshew being like fun bad Minshew.
Yeah. Minshew is doing what he did in Indianapolis, right? Where he's like, I know to throw the ball to the best guy. I'm just going to do that. So it's like, all right, cool. That's all we need you to do, to just drive the bus, Gardner. Just
We have Mr. Big Time who finally come in to listen to the show again, say, "Ooh, I designed this chart."
I mean, to be fair, I do think that you made some improvements to this chart, Drico. So
Right, I made the improvements to the content, and then you made it look better. Like let's be honest here.
But yes, we can throw Sam a bone here. You know, the original concept. You know, he gave us a great
version one. Version 1 credit Sam Sherman.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so those are the good on this chart. One other one that, you know, he's popping in the targets. Well, two guys. I don't want to spend very much time on one of them. Brenton Strange, huge ADOT, huge targets per route run. You had a good note about this, though, that the stats might be lying to us. Can you expand on that?
The backup, what's his name, Strange, where he had 7 targets, he had like this plus 70%, over 70% route run, and then like 17 ADOT, like 27% targets per run. So I should give credit here where it's due. Kyle Dvorak, he when I sent him these kind of stats when we were working on managed waivers this morning, and he watched every route, and he said that he doesn't look good, and when he was I think it was a second round pick in 23, and he's this kind of uber athlete from Penn State, but he wasn't really a receiver there, he was a blocker. So good information there. I think the kind of net is we probably shouldn't consider him like an actual good tight end, but especially in tight end premium, he is like probably one of the strongest tight end pickups of the year. I don't know how to buy in too much. I don't want to buy in too much to this role here, but like even the routes here are good. The targets are good. And until I guess one of the best targets until Evan Engram comes back.
Okay. The last guy I wanted to touch on, who was, you know, still in the good category, but again, kind of like the Hunter Henry numbers getting propped up from week 2, the Isaiah Likely numbers are getting majorly propped up from week 1.
Right. All of the week 1 cope of Likely is kind of getting proven right.
Yeah. Now, he didn't all the way turn back into a pumpkin, right? But it's looking more like, oh yeah, this guy is the backup tight end for the Ravens, or he's the third pass catcher for the Ravens, which again has never been something we're all that excited about.
He had a 49% route run. He had a 17% targets per route run in the last game. So like those are like solid outcomes for Likely. But like you said, he didn't become not a backup tight end. Still a backup tight end.
Yeah. Okay, let's get to the bad. All right. First, Kyle Pitts. I mean, week 1, we were really excited. He had 100% of routes run. That was really cool. But he wasn't earning targets. We were hopeful that maybe that could turn around. But man, watching the Monday night game and just wondering why Ray McLeod was getting just peppered with targets over and over, and Kyle Pitts could not get a target to save his life. A little frustrating as a Kyle Pitts owner. So it's just, you got to wonder, like, is this just a blip? Is he going to earn more targets as the season goes on? I think with Kyle Pitts, people are just so quick to react and say, oh my gosh, it's more of the same. I got rugged on Kyle Pitts again. But what's your read on this?
I'm having a tough time reading it. With the kind of preseason reports of him not being in shape, and then all being short targets, short A-dot targets. I think and even the biggest Kyle Pitts bull in your heart of hearts, when you first started thinking about Kyle Pitts as an NFL guy, the thesis was not that he's going to get a lot of short targets. It's like, no, this guy is basically a wide receiver with tight end designation. It's that part is not seeming to be true anymore.
Well, it depends on which wide receiver you think he is. Like, if you if you think that he's like a Jalen
Boutte,
or Keyshawn Boutte, then yes, he is. He's just like a wide receiver. Now, I'm not willing. I'm like semi leaving a light on for Kyle Pitts. I don't want to just throw it in the trash right now, but like I'm trending bearish.
That's how I feel too. Where it's like one of those things where it is tough to overreact to 2 weeks of data, but it's also very tough to not react to what we've seen here.
I mean, it's the earn a target over Raven or Cloud or Darnell Mooney challenge impossible here, which is just like, that sounds terrible, So
right.
Another candidate in the bad column here, we've got Kelsey, who, low targets per route run here. Is this just a blip, or is it a trend because now the Chiefs have actual competent receivers, so they don't feel the need to just force feed Kelsey? So are we seeing the scaled back Kelsey's usage plan right now? Like, what's your read on this?
So the nuance to me is that it's still like, I mean, you're still talking about Travis Kelce. Like, you still have the stats that we're seeing right now on Travis Kelce is absolutely fucking garbage. Like, these are bad stats. And so I think that's probably a mix of he is a little bit older, so maybe not quite as effective, to like probably a good chunk of it is just weird small game sample stuff. And it's like in a prior year, you just wouldn't see small game sample stuff problems for Kelsey. It's just like, no, he's Travis Kelce smashing. I think over a full season, you probably will see decent, or not decent production at cost, but you will see like usable games. It's not going to just be in the toilet every game. But with the prior that he's aging, there, and the start being this slow, it like, I think you have to at least adjust your expectations to like, maybe he's just a little bit older now. He won't be quite as effective. He can still be. I think you're still going to get some Travis Kelce games, but it's probably not the same as it was before.
If you want the spin zone maximum dose of Kelce Cope, what we're actually looking at is a low advance rate play at his cost. But when we're into the fantasy playoffs is when the Chiefs will really be needing to win games to secure the 1 seed in the bye, and they'll really be getting Kelce going. And that's when his usage is going to ramp up. So he's going
to be... You're right. The Chiefs haven't been playing close must-win games the first 2 games of the year against Baltimore and the Bengals. So they're just leaving them on the shelf.
Yeah, I said it was Cope. I didn't say it was. Okay, let's see. Other guys in the bad category. This one I don't need to spend a bunch of time on, but just wanted to mention him. Dalton Schultz just looks unnecessary, right? Like, I mean, shit, Tank Dell is having trouble getting targets. Again, it's only through 2 games. I'm not worried about Tank Dell at all, for the record, but like, I'm worried about Dalton Schultz. He doesn't look necessary in this offense.
Yeah, so the routes at 74%. I think that's a fair outcome for Schultz. 10% targets per run. Again, I think that's actually what you should have projected. I think that's pretty close to what you should have projected for Dalton Schultz. 8.3, pretty close to what you should have projected. It seems to me that the Schultz play was always about finding the odd touchdown.
Yeah.
And his price didn't reflect that. Certainly on FFPC, his price did not reflect a jag tight end who needs a touchdown to hit your lineup. To me, this is kind of right in line with expectations.
Yeah, that's fair, non-derogatory. One of the other guys in the bad category, Sam Laporta. If you drafted Sam Laporta, in best ball, you're extremely disappointed with the price that you paid for the guy. I mean, so my thesis for why I was lower on Amon-Ra this year was that you've got, the potential emergence of Jameson Williams. People are projecting Jahmyr Gibbs to take a step forward. And I was thinking, well, Sam Laporta is also going to cut in to that Amon-Ra target share. And so far it's gone the other way, where Jameson Williams and Jahmyr Gibbs definitely have seen their roles expand. Like I think we can say that pretty confidently here going forward. But Amon-Ra saw, that hurt him a little bit in week 1, but here in week 2, he just got, 20 targets. So, and Sam Laporta has really been the victim of, just, hey, there's a finite number of targets. Now, granted, what did the Lions have for total number of pass attempts this week? It's
been 90 attempts. Either 90 attempts or 90 dropbacks. Give me a second. But it for per week. But it's been high volume for the offense. 83 attempts over the 2 games.
Yeah.
So certainly high volume for the offense. I'm actually not worried per se about Laporta. You're still getting like kind of 80% routes run there. Like I don't think so. He's at 10% targets per route run for the season. I really don't think it settles there. So I think you're probably, this is probably a buy at a dip moment for Laporta, and like I mentioned, they have been really low in terms of getting the touchdowns that they want, and if they want to improve that, I think Laporta has to be part of that. So I do think it's pretty easy to tell the story of how Laporta bounces back.
I agree with that. Well put. Last one in the bad category, Mark Andrews, who similar targets per route run to Laporta, sitting just at 11%. Big increase from week 1. And his ADOT's also looking pretty good, sitting at 9.9, one of the highest ADOTs on the chart here. But are you worried about Mark Andrews? Is the little bit that likely was getting 17% targets per route run this week still? Is that concerning for you for Andrews? What do you think his outlook is for the rest of the season?
So week 2 definitely more promising for Andrews. We're still only like 73% route run. I think that has to be under what you would have projected, what you would have hoped for on Andrews. 19% targets per run. Much more positive than before, but under what you would have hoped for on Mark Andrews. So I think you have to be a little bit concerned with Andrews. It's definitely not the apocalyptic week 1 sort of like panic, but you have to be a little bit concerned that even in a bounce back that it wasn't quite to where you needed it to be. But it's certainly not dead. I think the outlook for Andrews is probably maybe a little bit better than for Kelsey, just given that we had a stronger bounce back. But you're definitely not in the elite tight end usage category here. You're kind of in the mediocre like low end tight end one usage right now.
Yeah.
And like the other point as well is, so 19% targets per run is like, it's fine, but when they're only running a limited route set, like that's also compounding a little bit as well. Because normally when it's lower there, you expect them to get targeted more heavily when they actually do get on the field. So yeah, I guess I'm mushy mouthed there. Like I'm like worried, but it's I think low end tight end one is probably a great way to handicap it.
Yeah, as someone who's one of the highest drafted tight ends that I have is Mark Andrews. I wasn't really worried after week one. After week two, I'm like, and I know a lot of people will be like, "Oh, why are you worried? Week two got so much better than week one." I'm slightly worried after week two. It just seems harder for him to be the true like smash where he's
returning
like one of the best seasons he's had in his career. It just seems
that seems off the table, unfortunately.
Yeah, seems at least a lot thinner. I don't know that I'm ready to call it totally off the table yet. It's just 2 weeks of data, but it seems thinner for sure for me. All right, we've gone through the good, we've gone through the bad, and now we're to the ugly. I had a joke here that I think works a lot better over text, but I'm going to say it out loud anyway. So it's not Dalton Kincaid, it's Lalton Kincaid, as in LOL, because this guy is getting only a 12% targets per route run with absolutely no target competition. I mean, Keon Coleman's out here getting 0 targets. You're competing with Khalil Shakir and Mac Hollins. And I mean, now granted, part of it is the Bills didn't throw a ton of passes, but still targets per route run is a percentage stat. Now also Dalton.
So in to be fair, in week 2, Kincaid got 27% targets per run.
He did, which brought his targets per route run up substantially. Now, that number is a little misleading because he missed a lot of the game where it was kind of a weird sequence. To start the game,
they established Kincaid early.
Yeah, he gets 2 targets right off the bat. They're both negative ADOT, little like screen plays, just get the ball in his hands and try and get him to do running through the air with Kincaid, and then he gets kneed in the head and goes off, misses a couple drives, comes back, but by the time he's back, they're really, the Bills were ahead and they were just running the ball, so he doesn't get a lot more looks. And so to take the mask off as the president of the Dalton Kincaid hater club, I don't think like as fun as it is to dunk on Dalton Kincaid, like I would definitely take him over Dalton Schultz. I'm absolutely he's not in the same universe as George Kittle for me, or
I would definitely take him over Brock Wright. Certainly.
I'd take him over Brock Wright. But here's a fun one. This one's actually kind of interesting. I think it's Kincaid still, but what do you think about Pat Freiermuth versus Dalton Kincaid?
That is Kincaid.
Yeah, I think so too. But here's another fun one. Tucker Kraft, who has similar targets per route run to Dalton Kincaid, but he has an infinitely higher ADOT. Well, actually, it's a negatively higher ADOT if we're multiplying, because Kincaid has a negative ADOT here. But Tucker Kraft, similar situation to Dalton Kincaid as far as his targets per route run and ADOT. Again, I'm clearly Kincaid.
I mean, it's Kincaid. Give me a hard one.
All right, you want a hard one? Let's see. I mean, okay, so here's the problem. The tier that Dalton Kincaid falls in is so clearly after all of the other tight ends that we would say are actually good.
Right, he's gonna get absolutely gapped by Trey McBride and Brock.
Here's one. Kyle Pitts,
and that's punishing at his price. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, Kyle Pitts or Dalton Kincaid?
Kincaid probably.
Yeah, for me the answer is neither, right? I think,
so just maybe to play devil's advocate here. So the 27% targets per run in week 2 is that like that's at least sign that they intend to like actually establish Kincaid, that they have, he's in their plans. Like if Kincaid can play decently, like he's gonna get a lot of targets. And the problem is that he hasn't played decently yet. And the games, even last year, the games where he did play decently were like not that many. But I still like, if you were like a Dalton Kincaid bull, I think that I think the upside is still like what you were playing for is still kind of there. It's a little bit thinner, but like you can still tell yourself a story right now, because especially it's only week 2.
It's honestly, the situation is, I mean, but like how you're feeling about it, and like the path to it becoming good for you is probably not all that different than Mark Andrews, right? Where,
yeah, I think you're probably looking at you probably are looking at silent killer for Kincaid. Where like you'll get what feels like decent production, but absolutely shellacked by Bowers and McBride.
Yeah. Oh man, if I could trade all my Kincaid shares for Brock Bowers, I'd do it. If I could, if you made me trade 2 for 1, I've got to take every 2 Kincaid teams and turn it into 1 Bowers team. I'd do it in a heartbeat. I'd do it in a heartbeat. If anyone's interested in the trade and you've got some Bowers teams that you'd like to trade some Kincaid teams for, slide into my DMs.
There you go. That's an interesting one.
But no, honestly, in like analyzing the Kincaid situation, I actually came away more bullish after this week. Like if we want to be truly honest about it, it's just too fun. It's too fun to dunk on him. But no, like I was encouraged by the team clearly knows that their receiving options are not fantastic, and they wanted to get him involved early. So I'm
right.
leaving a light on for him.
Right.
But it's way more fun to be a hater.
He's probably median outcome is some sort of like Evan Engram scam season.
Right.
We have we're told that he's gonna flash this brilliant play that we just haven't seen yet. And we haven't seen it yet. So there's still like some hope for that, but the most likely outcome is some kind of scam season.
Yeah,
and that feels more likely now.
Yeah, you paid for fancy Evan Engram.
Yeah.
Not a ton on the backup. I mean, we can flip to the backup tight end chart here real quick. I don't think there's a ton here. I mean, Jonnu Smith, not really anything. I mean, he's going to get scheme touches. You're praying for a touchdown. Jonnu Smith is just like this is a player who's on the field that can score a touchdown in an offense that's well schemed. So whatever.
My one takeaway is by who's actually on this chart, who we weren't expecting. Juwan Johnson being on this chart. Yeah. Like being this kind of like committee tight end. That's not what we drafted him for.
No, it's not great. I definitely am feeling much more bearish on Juwan Johnson now.
I do remember seeing he had a note that he played in all the 11 personnel snaps, and that the game script has been like anti-using Juwan Johnson because like they're
not throwing. Yeah.
Right, you're not going to use him much in a positive game script.
I mean, yeah, look at him. He's got 0 blocking. He's literally just there for
I noticed
the balls.
That too.
So Juwan Johnson, you know what is funny? Juwan Johnson is what everyone wanted Kyle Pitts to be. He is a receiver with tight end eligibility.
Unfortunately, he's got fullback usage.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, man, the Eagles would be a fun spot though, potentially, if they can hang some points, maybe get a little more Juwan involvement. That might be fun.
Yeah. So you're is that a primetime game?
Let's see. I don't know.
No, it's probably not.
Game. I don't think it is.
It's probably not.
Yeah, I don't believe it is. I think it's a Sunday main slate game.
Yeah, I don't know why I had that in my head. So should we move on to the
let's get to receivers here.
And so we've got receiver opportunity versus fantasy points. So horizontal weighted targets per run, which is like targets per run, but weighs the deep down the field targets more heavily and plot that against fantasy points, because we don't just want usage, we also want them to score the points. And a couple of very smart people have made this point over the years that actually the strongest predictor for next season, for this season's points, is last season's points. And so keeping a track of who's actually scoring is helpful too.
Yep. Sometimes the game doesn't have to be hard. Just look at the fantasy points from last year. And that'll help you predict next year.
Really,
man,
honestly.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm being serious. Man, the guy, though, that is, I mean, his ascension last year, like, we were all getting hot and bothered about this guy, and he's just continuing. Nico Collins just looking like an absolute alpha. I don't know if you were watching this game, but they were comparing him to Andre Johnson. It was pretty fun comparison.
Feels like fair. I mean, that's helmet scouting, but
right,
also feels fair.
Yes, I mean, yeah. Nico Collins just looks dominant. He's the question was, is there really a wide receiver one on the Texans, or is it just gonna be guys that trade off? I think. Well, I think if you want my actual answer on that, I think the answer is yes to both. Yes, Nico Collins is the wide receiver one, but also there will be weeks where Steph Diggs gets his or Tank Dell gets his, but Nico is the alpha. He is establishing himself as the alpha.
I think if you reran a 2-week data sample of the Texans in random sequences, there's a lot where different receivers look like the wide receiver one.
Yeah, yes.
So he's going to score a lot of points. Really excited about his prospects this year. But certainly don't write out the other guys.
In this same quadrant with him, we've got some new additions and some familiar faces. The new additions, I mean, this guy was here last week, but Jameson Williams, showing that week 1 was not a fluke, still continued to earn volume. Was out-targeted by Amon-Ra this week, but, you can see that Jameson Williams it definitely was not just a 1-week blip on the radar. They will both be, solid fantasy producers for this season. The other new addition here is rookie Malik Nabers, who had, and I just want to make sure that I'm right on this, a 60 what percent targets per route run?
Right.
Or 60% target share? What was it?
So Malik Nabers, actually, so he had a 31% targets per route run, but I think his overall target share, is something like 60-something%.
Yeah, it's just absurd. So crazy.
Wait, sorry, 31%. That's for the season. Yeah, my bad.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think it was 66% this week is what I believe, if my memory is serving. But
yeah, that sounds more right.
Kind of seems like the Giants figured out this is our best player. We just need to get in the ball over and over and over and over. Do you see that changing at all this season? Was this a week where it was we need to feed him just so he's happy, and then we'll go back to spreading it out a little bit more? Obviously, with him still as the wide receiver one, or are we just gonna see?
I mean, I think the thing about it is you're not gonna see a player finish with a 63% target share on the year. You're not gonna see that. But I think it could stretch the bounds of credibility, where it could be at more than 40.
That'd be so insane, but very fun.
Right. I'm just trying to put a realistic
No, I think that's I think that's reasonable too, which is crazy to if you told me that he'd have a 40% target share coming into this season, I would have laughed at you, but here we are.
In a healthy season, it's not less. It's certainly not less than 30. It's probably not less than 35.
Yeah, pretty wild. Old familiar faces up here: Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson. Surprise! 2 of the best receivers in football are still 2 of the best receivers in football. DK Metcalf shows up after a big nuke game with his teammate Jackson Smith and Jigba. This is one I really want to watch. I would anticipate that the Seahawks receivers can't maintain this level of fantasy production that they got from week 2. But also, I don't think it's going to be anywhere near as bad as week 1 was. I think in reality, the boring answer is probably somewhere in the middle. But very exciting to see both these guys here.
Yeah. We were kind of very sad about JSN not getting the targets in week 1, and then to see a bounce back where they targeted them heavily, and it actually became an important part of them winning the game too, of getting production through him. Very exciting. And then it wasn't just the short yardage stuff; it was also intermediate. It definitely feels like in versions of this season where the Seahawks offense is good and can move the ball, they have to involve a healthy amount of JSN, which great to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Another guy who is a new addition to this quadrant is Calvin Ridley, and we alluded to this earlier that the offense is Calvin Ridley, but it seems to potentially be making him fantasy viable. Now, I think it's just can he survive the utter stink of Will Levis to remain fantasy viable? Now, DeAndre Hopkins was able to survive the utter stink last season, and now for people that are somehow out of the loop on the DeAndre Hopkins stuff, he is playing with a torn MCL right now. He did not opt for surgery. He's just I don't need that ligament. That's a luxury ligament. I'll just go on without it.
It's only pain on the function of my knee.
Yeah. So obviously that is majorly hampering DeAndre Hopkins. So Calvin Ridley is the only show in town right now, because I don't know if you saw Tyler Boyd. The Titans should not have been in that game, but they kind of were. And then Tyler Boyd gets a chance to, make a grab near the end of the game. And it just hits him in the chest. And he drops it. It's all right, let's pack it up here. We're done. So what do you think about Calvin Ridley's outlook rest of the season? Does he belong up here?
No. I think you probably should expect probably 15 points a game, maybe a little. I guess he's in, that's the part that he's in. I think 15 points a game is probably on the high end, somewhere between 12.5, 15. So certainly not less than 10. If they're just that's the thing about the NFL. If they're just going to make him the focal point and feed him targets, then just true volume alone, he probably will finish somewhere in that range. But it's tough to see them get away with that, where why wouldn't a defense just okay, we're just gonna put the safety over Calvin Ridley, and you don't have an answer for that.
Yeah, that seems right to me. I would not anticipate him crushing for the whole season.
Right. And then with the short sample, he did get the benefit of that improbable touchdown catch.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't think you should be projecting eight that happening 8 more times.
No, certainly not. Okay, a receiver who you're hoping changes for the better if you've got him on a roster, Michael Pittman Jr., who is out there with his weighted targets per route run. The problem is the offense is not throwing all that much. Now, granted, they did throw a lot more this week than they did last week, but they threw almost as much to the other team as they did to their own team. Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, this is not a Michael Pittman offense.
No.
It does not suit them, where it's a low volume, but then they're going to chip deep. I guess the question then is, so he's right there around just under 7.5 points. Of like that doesn't feel startable right now.
No.
So you're benching Michael Pittman in most places where you have him, and you're not cutting him, because like what, except in very shallow leagues, you're certainly not cutting him in an FFC managed, but you have a really tough time starting him. Like you're sad to start Michael Pittman.
If you're starting Michael Pittman, and it probably means that you're losing that week, right?
Right.
Another guy in the same quadrant as Michael Pittman is Chris Olave, and he's right next to Gabe Davis too. So are we officially worried about Chris Olave yet? It's 2 weeks.
Yeah, you challenged. I was worried about him last week. You challenged me on that. And I think when you look into the trends on the Saints a little bit more, with the low pass rate and them not having to do like true dropbacks, and not really challenged as a passing attack, I think that has a lot to do with the low Olave use here, and you can certainly see the Eagles pushing their defense a lot more. So their offense actually has to go out and throw it, and I think that's where they're going to need Olave.
So, do you think this is a good bounce back spot for Olave? Would this be, I haven't done.
He's a buy low candidate, isn't he?
Yeah. I think I've done one dog bowl draft so far this week, so I haven't really been in the streets a ton there. But I would assume he goes pretty late there. You think this is a good spot to try and hammer him? Yeah.
I haven't looked at his. I just called him a buy low candidate. I haven't even looked at his expected points or anything like that. So let's have a look at that. And so expected points last week was 3. This week his expected points were 10.8. So he's not gonna pop. He's not actually gonna pop in a buy low model. Certainly not. But given how important he would be when the Saints offense actually has to do some true drop back passing game, certainly bounce back candidate.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, really quickly, last section on this chart I wanted to go through, but we'll get into the win sprinters anonymous quadrant, which is this bottom left quadrant here. I'm just gonna rapid fire here, and I want you to tell me if the guy is just destined to live in this quadrant, or if he's going to move to greener pastures and move to the right side of the chart, where he's at least getting more weighted targets per route run, and hopefully that's translating into more fantasy points per game. So I'm just going to hit you with some guys here in this bottom left quadrant. Christian Kirk.
He's probably stuck here.
Terry McLaurin.
Probably stuck here.
Jacoby Myers.
Yeah, he's stuck here now. He's been supplanted.
Amari Cooper.
Over full season, he probably moves right.
Yeah. Roma Dunze.
He should move right. If the Bears' offense is going to succeed, he should move right. After watching the Sunday night game, it doesn't feel like he will. But he has to. Like I'm gonna give them that coaching staff just a tiny bit of credit and say he moves right.
Brandon Ayuk.
Yes, they have.
Yeah,
to.
that one's the clearest one to me. Last one, Keon Coleman.
And they probably have to target him. They have to make him more important as well. Okay. Like if they have playoff aspirations, and they're like, oh, really hope this is a Khalil Shakir game.
It's gonna
really
say you
hope
can't.
We get a touchdown from Matt Collins here. Like they need to bring that guy on.
You don't think you can build the plane out of Khalil Shakir and Matt Collins?
I enjoy this note from KZ. DJ Moore is bound to give up eventually. Where he'll just lose his will to play. Like He's like, you know what? I retire. I'm good.
Thank God. I mean, thank God he got paid though, right? Like at least he can be rich and miserable.
Right. Financially rewarded for his good play.
Let's go to our 70 to 85% routes run guys here. So this chart has a lot of guys who, we normally would see on the other chart in like Mike Evans and CeeDee Lamb, but they just haven't been. I think like for the Cowboys, for example, there really wasn't a need for CeeDee Lamb to be running that many routes at the end of both of their first two games, right? They were beating the brakes off the Browns, and they got the brake speed off them by the Saints. So, he didn't run a ton of routes. So I don't think this is really like indicative of how many routes he's going to run. He'll probably graduate to that first chart here. Tyreek kind of always lives on this chart. That's just how he is, right? He was here last year, all year. He was perpetually breaking the chart.
He's an older, hyper efficient player. So this is how to manage him.
Jaden Reed, I would expect to probably stay. He's going to be a fixture here, I would assume.
Right, slot only. But you're where are you drafting him? You're really happy with the 75 to 80.
Yep, absolutely. Guys that I thought were worth mentioning here, Chris Godwin. Maybe people overreacted last year to Mike Evans, being the touchdown hog. Maybe Chris Godwin is still good. Maybe all he needed was to operate out of the slot. What do you think?
Yes, that certainly seems to be how it's worked out. It's interesting. So Mike Evans Chris Godwin 82% red shirt. Mike Evans at 84. McMillan at 87. So that does feel a little bit more rotational than a typical offense. Well,
because they're getting Trey Palmer worked in there too, right?
Right. But Trey Palmer, he's at 21%.
Okay.
And so I guess that sums to 274%. So like 2.7 receivers a play.
Yeah.
And they're mixing in three guys a lot. So I think that is a little bit interesting, but obviously they're doing it very effectively. I guess the question is, we shouldn't expect the Bucs offense to operate this well and this efficiently all season, or should we?
I mean, if you made me pick one way or another, if they're going to stay this efficient or regress a little bit, I'd probably pick regress. But I also think it's kind of what we talked about in reverse for the Lions, where Goff had all these attempts, right?
Yeah.
And it was because of the game script. And the Bucs really slowed down passing in this game. Like in the second half, they didn't need to pass as much. So Baker didn't throw as much, and I think that you could see them become a little less efficient, but have the volume tick up a little bit. And so I'm kind of the opinion that the Bucs receivers might just be like, we might be seeing like their baseline production right now. Like this may just be like a pretty good offense this year.
Right. That makes sense. One thing that I notice here, and I'm not sure where this stands in the context of the rest of his career, but Mike Evans' ADOT is just 11, and 21% targets per out run. It's only 2 games. That does feel like a little bit of a fade off. But
yeah,
I want to check it here.
Yeah, I'm willing to chalk that up to small sample stuff. Not ready to say like he's always lost a step or what have you.
Right. It is too early to say that. So yeah, last year he was 24% targets per run. And so he's at 21% now. So that's certainly within kicking range. And then his ADOT was 15 last year. So ADOT down and target per run down. So then I guess the piece though is if you expect Godwin's production to stay where it is, you kind of need it to be true that Mike Evans is lost.
I'd say what I think is the most likely thing to happen is that they kind of alternate, where it's not going to be that, Godwin keeps this exact production every game for the whole season, but just they oscillate back and forth, where Evans will have these big, efficient, deep plays where he's, hauling in a really deep ball, or mossing a guy for a touchdown or something like that. And Godwin then loses out a little bit on what he can produce because Evans is just eating up. Hey, Mike Evans just hauled in a 40-yard touchdown, so the drive's over. Like, Chris Godwin can't keep earning targets anymore because the drive's done. So I think it'll probably oscillate back and forth between them. But I think, like, as a baseline, like, if you kind of split the baby on where they're at on the chart, where Godwin is super high with above 20 fantasy points per game right now, and Evans is in that 15 range, probably both of them closer to that 15 range, maybe a shade above. But it's looking like a pretty good passing offense.
Yeah, and then the other piece as well is I know he doesn't belong on this chart. No, he actually does. He does. And Jalen McMillan, we were pretty hyped about him getting the role. And he was a ship chasing clip. But then his targets per run is just it's like 9%. And then
yeah, he's on the previous chart, but he's in the wind sprinter quadrant.
Oh, okay. He's getting this like 70 and ADOT, but rarely targeted. And so the that's the other question of is he going to stay there all season, or is this just like the day one rookie role is to clear off the safeties, run off the safeties, and then maybe they expand his usage more? Like,
I think it's the day one rookie role, but I think that if you're expecting him to be exploding with a huge breakout halfway through the season, I think you're probably a little overly optimistic. To me, what this feels like is you have two very good incumbent receivers here with Godwin and Evans, and McMillan, could be very good. And it's just going to be hard to earn targets alongside those guys. So incredible contingent value, because I think that if you saw a void, in the offense, he could definitely step in and fill it. And then also I think that as the season progresses and they get to trust him more and more, and he'll make some big plays here and there. Like, I mean, week one, he could have had multiple touchdowns. So the guy can make some big plays. So I think we'll see his role grow over the season. I just think it's going to be really hard for him to usurp either of these guys just because they're both good.
Right. They're good. They're playing well, and they're entrenched. Yeah, that makes sense.
Two other ones on this chart here that I liked. Now they're both similar in where they're at as far as I'm missing. I can't find my Deontay Johnson dot. Where does Deontay Johnson go? There he is. Okay, he's all the way down near a little above 50% weighted targets per route run, but only around 5 fantasy points in that bottom right quadrant. So Rashid, I wanted to talk about him and Rashid Shaheed because they kind of feel like they're two ships and they're just so different in the way that they get there. Where Shaheed is getting there on extreme efficiency, but not a ton of targets, right? But his weighted targets per route run look really good. He's getting such deep passes, right? And then also the offense, there's just not a ton of routes happening. And then Deontay, well, you're in this entirely dysfunctional offense, but now you get the quarterback change. So I'm wondering, if you had to pick between these two guys, Rashid Shaheed or Deontay Johnson,
oh God, rest
of the season, who do you think is going to end up in the more favorable spot on this chart?
Who's going to score more points? Who would I project for more? I'd probably give slight edge. Rest of the season, I'd probably give slight edge to Deontay. But that's because we kind of seen the one negative on Shaheed is we've kind of seen this start before where he's catching these deep bombs, and it looks great, and we feel great about it. But then, has he? I don't think he has sustained it over a full season. So like, we obviously shouldn't just expect Shaheed to just be catching deep bombs, every game, and that to be how the Saints offense works. Like it's going to happen again this year. I'm not trying to say that it won't. And then and I think his rate stuff is being pushed up a little. Shaheed's rate stuff is being pushed up by the low attempts, whereas like it's almost like a bomb to Shaheed, then call it a day.
Yeah.
And in 2 weeks of data, I don't feel great about just projecting that kind of like rate stuff going forward. Whereas Deontay, I think like he's been a target earner. He's continued to earn targets, and now he has like this kind of borderline competent quarterback where he's going to get those targets from. So he probably will score good points the rest of the way with Dalton.
Yeah, I think that's how I land as well. It's really fun to be the Rashid Shaheed Bowl right now, though.
It sure is. Those screenshots are looking nice.
Yes, but okay. Moving on to another receiver. Here's what I'm curious. How does Ray McCloud have greater than a 50% weighted targets per route run in an NFL offense? Can you answer that question?
Yeah. So last week, our kind of explanation was that Kirk was so tentative, and he was just like kind of like tossing it down to Ray. But it seemed it certainly feels like he has a good comfort level with him.
He was operating in the intermediate zone too during that game, the Monday night game. He was doing a lot of the find the soft spot in the zone across the middle, or he was doing like the 10 or 15 yard out stuff like.
Yeah, I'm perplexed by it. Especially Darnell Mooney was kind of doing the same thing.
Yeah, where Darnell Mooney finally made his hay was he had that deep shot where he broke away for the incredible touchdown and then had the front flip into the end zone. But
sorry, what I meant was it's surprising that Mooney was a favorite target of Kirk as well.
Yeah.
Like, that piece I'm perplexed by. I'm honestly like, the information seems to be saying that those two guys have Kirk's trust, and that he's going to use them a lot, and that it's somewhat working. But it doesn't jive for me. It doesn't feel right to come to that conclusion. So I don't want to have like that's kind of like super strong stance on it.
So what I'm hearing is you'd be buying low on Drake London then?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so
we do have an. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, there's a guy in the win sprinter category here on this chart that I really want to highlight ahead of the Thursday night game this week, because I think he's actually a fun spot for short slate stuff. Like the primetime Palooza drafts on Underdog, where it's just the two gamers. You get the Thursday night and the Sunday night, or for Showdown, and that's Demario Douglas. So earlier in the show, we mentioned how the Patriots' offensive line is all banged up. Literally every single starter is listed on the injury report, with some more serious injuries than others. So they're probably going to have a hard time pass protecting here. They're going to have a harder time running the ball, even though we know they want to run the ball, but it's against the Jets' stout run defense, so it's going to be challenging there. And just this week, the coaching staff said of Demario Douglas that we need to get him more involved. He's one of our most explosive players. We have to find a way to get him the ball. This is like the primo squeaky wheel spot for me, and it's not like Demario Douglas is some superstar where it's like, oh my God, I can't believe we haven't been targeting Demario Douglas. But I'm reading the tea leaves here, and I feel like this is a really good spot to attack Demario Douglas, especially just from the way the matchup works out. he's running, I believe it's 82% of his snaps have been in the slot so far this season. So he is that's like one of the highest slot rates you're going to get, So he's going to get to avoid some of the Jets' best corner play. He's getting to avoid Sauce Gardner. The name of their other really good corner is eluding me right now, but he's avoiding their strongest coverage play, and he's ideally set up to be able to take advantage of the fact that the Patriots probably need to get the ball out quick. So I'm looking at
33% slot rate. Well, actually, no.
Slot snaps.
Yeah. You're right. I was doing the wrong math. You're right.
We do have a question in the chat before we go to the next chart, or not a question, but more of a demand. We're being held hostage by Casey, who demands that we talk about QJ, who did in fact have 2 touchdowns this week. Man, you just wish that it could go to Ladd McConkey. Just please use Ladd McConkey instead of QJ. But to QJ's credit, as like a noted QJ hater, I have to say he didn't drop the touchdown passes, which has been a big problem for him in the past. I'm hesitant to say that it's sticky and it's going to stay, but I don't know. What are you willing to revise your opinion, your prior on QJ?
And no, I am not. We have some, and this is another one where we have some really strong rate stats, for 1 week of data. In fairness, we have 2 weeks now, but this is a really low. This is a really low kind of like sample size. So what do we got? We've got 51 dropbacks. For this team, and then you've got like where are we coming in at the average? For QJ, we're coming in, where is he on the chart? He's coming in 62%, weighted targets per run. So like that's good. That's honestly good. And he's getting air yards. He's getting targets down the field, but. It's tough to see that kind of like good rates stat to continue over a larger sample size, like and then you catch 2 touchdowns and a 22 dropback week, and it's like, oh wow, this guy's amazing. Like I mean I think he's a waiver pickup. Like I think I have a team we're probably gonna put in a bid to pick him up. But it's truly like I don't know, dumpster diving. Like, oh, he did something. Let's see if he can do it again. Like, but it's hard. It is hard to have a lot of confidence that that will be a thing going forward. I see Steph had the note that Leg Up are pushing him back into the dynasty ranks. I mean, he should be ranked in dynasty. That seems fair to me. But like I said, it's hard to have a lot of confidence that this kind of thing is going to continue. What do you think?
No, yeah, I'm with you. I don't want to. I'm a little conflicted because it's truly a barren. Like, there's a reason that I was willing to draft, Jerry Rice Jr. Because like it's a barren wide receiver room. So that's the part that makes me a little bit more willing to be like, maybe I'll pick him up on. I think you put it well. Like, you can pick him up on waivers. I'm not like playing him in DFS or Battle Royale or anything like that. But
right, certainly
it's just like that. He was totally flatlined before. Like and now maybe like you heard a little. We've got
something. 10 seconds of pulse.
You heard a little something on the heartbeat monitor, but you're not sure if it was just noise or whatnot. So anyway, we can move on to the last wide receiver chart here.
Yeah.
This chart is mostly wind sprinters. There's not a lot here. There's really only 2 guys.
And Jalen Waddle?
Yeah, so Jalen Waddle with classic Jalen Waddle.
Right.
Miss a bunch of snaps due to injury.
He can't keep getting away with this.
Yeah, surely it changes. The only two guys I had notes on that I wanted to get your opinion on, Xavier Legette, kind of same vein as the Deontay Johnson stuff we talked about, but Legette's got good weighted targets per route run. Now, granted, it's come from a totally dysfunctional offense, so that might change entirely with the new quarterback. But are you interested in Legette here with Dalton?
Yeah. The rookie having this kind of like high weighted targets per run out the gate is super interesting. Obviously, you do run this kind of risk that it's like on a low-ish snap share, like 50 to 60 is not that bad. It's not like it's on like 20% or 30% route share, but that is some risk there that if they ramp it up, that he can't maintain that efficiency. But to me, that's super interesting that you get a rookie earning targets on that kind of rate, and then gets a QB upgrade. That could end up being really fun.
So you wanna hear something disgusting? If you want a really creative way to lose your money this week, the Raiders and the Panthers play. The Raiders have shown us they're willing to throw the ball if necessary. The limiting factor here is going to be, can Andy Dalton actually do something against the Raiders defense, which was feisty enough to give Lamar Jackson trouble, right? So, keep that in mind. But
right.
I mean, Andy Dalton has been fun in the past. And Andy Dalton will sling it. So I'm kind of thinking like maybe a little Brock Bowers at tight end, and then I play the Andy Dalton double with a little Xavier Legette and Deontay Johnson absolute vomit stack and just jam chalk everywhere else. How stupid am I?
Can you really play a 50% route share guy on like the Panthers in DFS?
I mean,
the answer "can you" is yes.
should you is the better question. No, honestly, like if you want like a legitimate idea of how to play it, like you probably just do Deontay Johnson, Andy Dalton, skinny stack with Brock Bowers, and right. Just that alone,
right.
Andy Dalton's going to be bargain basement. So
right, you heard it here first on Stat Chasing. You don't need to double stack Andy Dalton. You don't need to. A skinny stack is fine.
I might, but you don't need to. Okay, last guy here. Another interesting one to touch on before we get to the Thursday night game, but this guy scored his first NFL touchdown. It was also his only catch of the game, I believe, is at Ja'Lynn Polk. So Polk is doing the rookie wide receiver thing where he's getting more usage week after week. He's earning more snaps. The other guys are like starting to take more of it. Tyquan Thornton he has fully turned back into a pumpkin, right? He's off the field. Ja'Lynn Polk is in for Tyquan Thornton. You're getting less of these, pure dust balls out there running routes for the Patriots. So are we at all hopeful for Polk, or is he just probably not going to be fantasy relevant until you get like a Drake May?
So you've got the increase in route share from 62% to 69% week over week. And that 69% came with a 14% targets per run. So you do have some increase there. I think, you have room to grow there, with it being early days in his rookie season. But without a QB change, that doesn't feel like very promising. That doesn't feel like enough of a standing to like make it any kind of real bet on a guy, to me anyway.
Yeah, I agree. He's not. You can't play him in DFS. You can't play him in like full slate battle royales, like a primetime Palooza or a showdown. He's definitely viable.
Right. Where it's basically a showdown, in the primetime Palooza.
But he's not even a stash on, in a home league, or he's not even
right in a short bench league. He's not really worth stashing.
Yeah. Was there anyone else on this chart that you wanted to touch on before we wrap it up?
No, I don't think so. I don't think we have that much interest. I mean, yeah, I don't think we have that much interest to say. I guess I'm looking at this chart and I'm kind of interested in Jennings because like I know every time I see him, he's looking awesome, but then I'm like, oh, why is he in the low kind of like route share? Is it the injury? So he 58% week 1, 69% week 2. So Jennings is probably like an okay pickup with the Devo injury. If you're really truly in a pinch, but that still feels pretty gross, but worth mentioning, I thought.
Yeah, it's a good call.
Yeah, that's I do like that Matt Collins is hidden behind the box thing here.
Yeah, he is. He's sneaky there.
But no more interesting notes, I don't think.
All right.
So I think that's stat chasing. We shaved a lot of time off of last week.
Whole hour.
So we're now at 2 hours and 40 minutes, and thanks for everyone who stayed on. I appreciate the love, Casey. And that's it from me.
See you guys next week.